Good. Okay, we've got some people coming in now, and we're all here. So you know what? Let's get going. Now, I've just found out that sharing screen is not actually going to be possible right now because unfortunately, the challenge with it is just that then you won't see me at all. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do for now is, if you can, just get your notepads, and we're going to do our best to communicate with each other over messages. If anyone does find the way to share screen here so I can show you what's going on with regards to a little PowerPoint that can perhaps be used here, then that will hopefully help too. A live recording of this video will also be present as well. So hopefully that's going to help. But in the meantime, let me introduce myself and what this talk is going to be about. So my name is Kam, in case some of you don't know me, and a bit about me and my background. I went to Cambridge University where I studied engineering. So I did manufacturing engineering tripos, and I'll tell you a little bit about my academic journey through Cambridge in a few minutes. After I graduated, which was in 2015, with my undergrad and my master's, I then went into management consulting, which is a profession that's quite popular among students who perhaps have graduated from those universities when you don't really know what you want to do, but you want a fairly challenging job and a good income. So that's the kind of path that I took, was management consulting. But I always had this kind of interest for when it came to performance psychology, both from my background around sports, but also the academic side as well. And that led me down this path which I'm on now, which is becoming a coach in terms of performance and mindset, and also being a speaker. So I go into schools and companies to give talks, and also being the author of a book called The Ultimate Guide to Exam Success, and the creator of the Exam Success Academy online program, which I posted about on this group a few times. So in terms of what I do, I mean, over the last few years, I've spoken to over 4,000 students across different schools in the UK and universities across the UK. And I've coached one-to-one over 300 students as well. So the hope is that what I'll be able to share with you guys today will be incredibly valuable for you. So in terms of my story, I want to share this with you briefly because what I want you to understand is that excelling in exams is not a function of just being naturally talented or gifted and not being within reach for most people. It really is something which there's an art to it and there's a skill to it that you can train yourself. And the example I give here is, for me, when I was doing my A-levels, I was doing maths, chemistry, physics, and further maths. And I was very happy to actually, after my AS grades, because we had AS back then, I was very happy to drop further maths because I was really struggling with it. In fact, I scored 28% on my mock exams, which was absolutely horrific, right? That was me doing the best I could at the time, far lower than other students in my class, and it was absolutely horrific. So that was the situation that I was in. However, Cambridge then gave me an offer just a few days after I got this mark back, which asked for an A-star, AA offer. Specifically, the A-star was in further maths. And I was confronted with this choice. You know, it's January, I've got my exams coming up in June, and I'm at 28% and I've got to go to 90%. And so for me, it was really a choice of, do I just kind of chuck that aside, forget Cambridge? Imperial's a great university, let me focus on that. It's just an A-star in maths, which I can achieve. Or do I really go for it? Do I go for that A-star grade in further maths, knowing that I very well may do my best and still not have a chance to meet that? I'm very grateful to my 18-year-old self who realized, to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, that it is better to know and be disappointed than to not know and always wonder. And I went for it and gave my best. And some of the tools that I used to do this are the ones that I now share in my Exam Success Academy program and that I will share with you guys today. The outcome of that was that I did manage to get the A-star grade and I did go to Cambridge, following which I struggled immensely. For the first 2 years at Cambridge, I really struggled. In fact, in my first year, I scored a low 2-2 grade. It was the lowest grade in my entire college, and I came 563rd out of a cohort of 619 students. Now, my director of studies was not very happy with this performance and did let me know that I probably need to do something to change this because my grade was on the very low side, and that shouldn't be repeated ideally in the future, or it might jeopardize my position at Cambridge. In my second year, I decided I was determined not to let that happen again. I gave my best, but I fell short by 0.2%. I fell short. And that was absolutely gutting because, as most students really are aware, our biggest fear is that we kind of give our best and then we miss the grade by just 1% or something like that, right? It's a really horrifying thing to think about, to just give everything we have and to miss the grade by 1%. And that's what happened to me in Cambridge by 0.2% in my second year. And it was really, really gutting, really disappointing. And what I had to kind of do to bounce back from that was to realize that everything I'd done up to that point, it just wasn't working for me. It may have taken me up till my A levels, but it just was not going to help me excel at that next level. And so I reached a position where I was going into my third year. I decided to specialize in manufacturing engineering tripos, which had a mixture of maths and a lot more essays, which I felt I'd actually be stronger at compared to the very in-depth maths side that engineering offered. And that year, I actually almost dropped out of Cambridge. And I'm very honest about this. I almost dropped out for reasons related to my physical and mental health. Probably 80% mental health, 20% physical health. And if it wasn't for asking for help, getting the help I needed, I would not have stayed in Cambridge. And I was extremely fortunate that I learnt from wiser people than I that actually it does take courage to ask for help when we need it. And that was what kept me there, kept me in that environment, and made me rethink completely what it would take for me to excel in this environment. And that was where these 8 principles were born. Because I started to look around at all the Cambridge students around me, and I realized that 95% of them were miserable. They were stressed, they were struggling. It was a real battle for them every single day to stay motivated and do what they needed to do. But then there were some who were just excelling. They were excelling in their sports, in their social life, and their academics. They were absolutely dominating their time at Cambridge. And so I decided I wanted to learn from these students. What were they doing differently? And that is where these 8 principles came from. And that is what I wish to share with you guys today. I want to teach you guys what these 8 principles are so that you can apply it for yourselves in your journey, in your academic life. Now, the sad thing about these 8 principles is that schools really don't focus on them. They don't focus on them. They're so busy teaching you content, but they're not teaching you how to apply that content, first of all, for exams, and secondly, in a way that is sustainable for you, in a way that you might actually enjoy and therefore enjoy learning, which makes the whole process so much easier. So that's what I wish to share with you guys today. Now, from my side of things, I'm just going to do a quick check of the messages. Got an "Are we here?" Yes. So I just want you guys who are here right now, if you can, just to write in the comments and just say, yes, we're here, maybe what subjects you're doing, what goals you have academically, so that I can answer these and relate it to that. So if you can, just share in the comments that you're here and watching this, and we can make it happen. So let's see if everything is all good over here right now. So we're on this live link. Yep, we've got a few people. Hi, Annabelle. Nice to see you here. Hi, Cynthia. Yes, we're here. Ready to go. Good, good. If I could find a way here to share my screen, that would be wonderful. So if anyone knows how to share screen on a Facebook Live, I would be very, very grateful, because I think you guys will really enjoy this little graphics that I've got, these infographics that I've got to share with you all. Amazing. Hi, Shalaka. Nice to see you here. Hi, Kausa. Amazing. Maths further, maths, physics, and computer science. Tough subjects. Very, very good. All right. Amazing. So, anyone else here? Anyone else want to comment and jump into this so that we can, contribute and keep this going, keep this conversation and talk going as well? All right. Get a few more as well. And hopefully, let me just see if I can find a way to share this screen with you all. It's a real shame. Let's see. Oh, we've got someone here taking a break from their studies. Wonderful. Hi, Jyoti. Glad you can make it onto the live link as well. That's wonderful. So, let's see what we can do over here. Still trying to figure out if it's possible to share our screen. So can I ask, when you guys see this, are you seeing me right now, or are you actually seeing a PowerPoint presentation? Because I don't think that the PowerPoint is visible to any of you all. I think it's just me and my face. So please do let me know if you can actually see a screen that I would like to share with you. Let's see. So let's see if this option is even available. Right, I don't think it is actually available. I think it's one of those things that I had to start the entire talk sharing the screen, which is a shame. So just me, yep. All right, no worries at all. So Himani's here as well. Son's in year 11, plans to take maths, further maths, physics, and economics. A great set of subjects if they're looking to apply and to study economics at somewhere like Cambridge, perhaps. And Kals as well, doing maths, further maths, physics, and computer science. Again, a great set of subjects if you wish to pursue computer science or engineering routes at all. So really, really good subject set over there that we have. Perfect. Well, guys, you know what? We're not going to be able to get a graphic on this, it seems. It's going to have to be a live talk. So what I'm going to do is just get on with this, and I'm going to teach you guys these 8 principles of exam success. If you have your notepads with you, please do write these things down. I trust they're going to be as helpful as they can be. So what are these 8 principles? What are these principles? The first principle is time management. The second principle is mindset management. The third principle is studying tools and learning techniques. The fourth principle is on-the-day exam performance. The fifth principle is physical activity and movement. The sixth principle is nutrition and hydration. The seventh principle is sleep. And our 8th principle is support groups. And I'm not going to say these and now just leave you guys be. I'm going to really talk to you about what each of these things are, okay? So, oh, by the way, thank you, Cynthia, for the instructions in the setup menu. Choose start screen share. Unfortunately, I believe that I've already clicked go live. So I think it was a situation where I had to share screen beforehand, in which case you wouldn't have seen me at all, you'd have just seen the screen. So lesson learned for next time, I guess. Lesson learned for next time. So I don't want to end the live video this time again, so I think we're going to have to keep going like this. So let's talk about what these 8 principles are for a little bit, okay? So time management. What is time management? Well, for me, time management for students, it is your ability to schedule your time, to prioritize your activities, and to be able to carry your tasks out in a productive way. Now, do schools teach you how to do that? I don't think they do. I think a lot of them impose schedules on us, but I don't think they really teach you how to prioritize your time or how to carry it out productively. And that's not their problem, unfortunately. So many teachers are teaching so many students, they just don't have the time to teach these skills. But it is so vital to your exam performance. So we're going to elaborate a bit in this talk on how to create good time management. Now, what about mindset management, the second principle? Well, these are the tools to recognize, understand, manage, and accept our emotional experiences. Because we all have emotions, and as anyone who's been studying knows, if you're feeling demotivated, you're not going to enjoy studying. If you're feeling stressed, studying is going to be quite difficult. If you're feeling excited, studying goes a lot better. So our emotions do play a role in how we study. And mind management is also about our ability to create motivation, to manage that stress and anxiety, and to cultivate resilience. How to bounce back when maybe an exam doesn't go so well. How to bounce back when we fail at a task. How to keep our spirits high when our self-doubt is kicking in, right? It's a crucial part to exam performance, and it was the one trait that the top Cambridge students I knew all had. They had this mind management on point. They were really able to excel on it. So the third tool is studying tools and techniques, studying tools and learning techniques. And this is all about learning how to learn, right? And again, you'd think that they teach you at school about these things, but they really don't. They don't teach you how we learn best. So that's what I'm going to give you guys today. I'm going to teach you how we actually can learn most effectively. And also how we can maintain a love for learning despite exam stress, which I think is so crucial as well, because most students I know, we're jaded. We're so tired of just learning content, churning it out in exams. And even though we may have loved learning in the past, we're losing that passion and enthusiasm now. And that makes it so challenging when it comes to our actual, goals, when it comes to excelling in the long term at top universities. And ultimately, when we go into our jobs in the future, we're going to be learning a lot. And if we've already lost that love for learning, if we're afraid of making mistakes, it's really going to cause problems in our experience there. The fourth principle that I mentioned was on-the-day performance. And what I mean by this is actually doing our preparation justice so that we can perform as well as we possibly can on the day of our exam. I mean, how many of us have revised so hard and then come into that exam room and just panicked maybe, or just felt a bit stressed and overwhelmed? The truth is exams are about a performance. They're about a performance. And if you don't know how to perform on the day, in that moment when it counts, all of that preparation, unfortunately, doesn't amount to nothing, but it has had a severe impact mitigated in that sense, because your entire aim of it was to excel in those grades that you needed. So I think that on-day performance is also crucial. Good message saying, second this, while studying at Cambridge, mindset management was a skill that differentiated top students from the rest. I completely agree there, V. I completely agree. I wish I could say that I had that. The truth was I didn't, and that's why I struggled in those first 2 years. And it wasn't until my third year where I realized just how much of a difference that it made. So, guys, I've mentioned the 4 principles which are directly related to our academic performance: time management, mindset, studying tools and learning techniques, and on-the-day performance. But there's more than that. There's more. There are 4 other principles which are more lifestyle-based, which were the real things that allowed students to optimize their preparation, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by this. The first one of these was physical activity and movement, right? The first of these lifestyle principles, so the 5th principle overall. Physical activity and movement. I know some of you are thinking, going, well, how's me exercising or going for walks actually going to help me improve my exam performance? Well, not only are there studies that show how directly it affects your brain chemistry in a way that helps you to learn more effectively, how it increases the size of your hippocampus, which is the part of your brain used for short-term memory storage, but, and this is the amazing thing, in Cambridge University, they did a study as part of the Sports and Athletic Performance Study, which I can provide a link for, back in 2019, where they looked at 4,000 undergraduate students between 2005 and 2016, and they analysed, out of these students, which ones got a first, a 2-1, a 2-2, or a third-class grade, right? And what they found was that out of 4,000 undergraduates, the students who played sports at a university level, in other words, training 5 to 6 times a week, were more likely, 10% more likely to achieve a first-class grade and 20% more likely to achieve a 2-1 grade than their peers who didn't do sports at that level. Now, this really begs the question, what are they doing that's causing this? What's contributing to that? And the hypotheses that we have around this is that students who are doing sport at that level, they're getting 1, the neurological benefits of physical activity and movement; 2, that support group and that social interaction they really need; 3, the mental health benefits when it comes to actually doing sports and activity; 4, the time management skills. They learn to become so efficient with their time because they're balancing their commitments in their sports terms also alongside their academics, right? And 5, well, perhaps some of these students have been in environments where, because they've been playing these sports from a young age, they've been taught how to balance their time since that young age, and that's just allowed them to carry on their high performance. So, I really, really think that it's important for us to keep in mind that actually physical activity and movement, it's not something that we sacrifice when things get busy. It is a really important principle to keep in mind, and it was one that, again, I can be honest here with you guys. In my 4th year, I was the captain of the Cambridge University tennis team. And in that year, it was unreal. 85% of students on our team, training, again, 6 to 7 times a week in some capacity, got first-class degrees, first-class grades in their degree, which is just beyond statistical, it's beyond it, right? You can't even imagine how that happened. So it's a really good thing to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the 6th principle, which is nutrition and hydration, a similar thing happens, right? I want you to just think about this. Our food is our fuel, right? It's our fuel. If we're fueling our body with junk, our brain is going to produce junk, right? If you're fueling yourself with quick sugars that cause us to spike and then drop in that energy, if we're fueling ourselves with energy drinks that lead us to have unhealthy dependencies on caffeine that then massively drop, and then we need to continue to have more of that. If we're filling our diet with things that contribute to ill health, which means that we fall ill and we can't revise or study as well, right? It's going to all lead to poor performance. So it's really important to fuel our bodies in the optimal way. And I talk a bit about how we can go about doing this as students in my programs. And then when it comes to hydration, dehydration has been linked to low mood, which of course affects our motivation to study, and actual shrinkage of brain tissue, right? Poor performance in terms of the ability to process cognitive loads. All of these are things that we need to have if we want to optimize our studying. If you're studying for 25 minutes in an inefficient way, that 25 minutes might as well just be used doing something else, right? You want to get the most out of every minute you're spending studying, so why not optimize these factors around your studies? The seventh principle I talked about was sleep. And sleep has actually been called a performance-enhancing drug because it is vital for learning, memory recall, and health. In fact, when we sleep is when our things in our short-term memory storage are transferred to our long-term memory. It is when learning really occurs in terms of neuroplasticity. It's when new neurons develop to show that, to essentially allow our brain to follow through with the different actions that we take. If you're trying to learn a new process, you need to develop procedural memory, and that's what happens when we're sleeping. So you being able to study for 8 hours but sleep for just 5 is like shooting yourself in the foot. You're basically sabotaging so much of that learning that you're doing. So it is so important to ensure that we're getting that quality sleep. And I'm going to give you some tactics for that today as well. And the eighth principle, it's about support groups, right? The people that we are surrounding ourselves with. We need to do our utmost to surround ourselves with people who inspire us, motivate us, and support us, not those who drain us, sabotage us, and lead us down unhealthy pathways. If someone else wants to jeopardize their future, that's their choice, but we do not have to go down with them. We do not have to go down with them. So it's our choice who we surround ourselves with, both in terms of our academic support groups, our teachers, our tutors, and our mentors, but also in terms of our personal support groups, our friends that we choose, right? Choose people to be around that inspire you and motivate you and push you to be your best, as opposed to those who feed your doubts, feed your fears, and make you a lesser version of yourself. So guys, I've been sharing with you guys what these 8 principles are. And so what are the most common challenges students face around these 8 principles? Well, on a time management front, the biggest challenges, procrastination and poor planning. On the mindset front, well, pressure to perform, high stress and anxiety, low confidence and self-doubt, and low motivation. In terms of studying and learning, well, it's when learning becomes a chore and you just feel demotivated. It's having inefficient studying strategies. And in terms of our lifestyle, the things that sabotage students most, poor sleeping habits, and having poor support groups to be around. So what I want to do now with you guys is actually help with a couple of these things, okay? I don't have time to go through all of it. That's what my programs online and everything are for. But I'm going to go through some of it so you guys can extract as much value as possible. So the first one of these that I want to share with you guys is about procrastination, okay? So if you're a student, you probably procrastinated. If you're a parent watching this, you've also probably procrastinated as well. Why does it happen? Why does procrastination happen? Well, in simple terms, it's because if we think of our brain, it wants 2 things. It wants to attain pleasure, to feel good, and it wants to avoid pain, feeling bad. When it comes to studying, how do we feel about studying? I guess in 90% of students, we're approaching it with a mindset of, oh, I don't want to do this. I'd much rather be doing something else. You know, oh God, there's so much to do. I'm overwhelmed, right? These are all negative emotions. We're experiencing this negative emotion, and so our brain goes, I don't want to feel this way. Let me go and do something instead that brings me joy. Let me go and do something instead that makes me feel good, right? And so because of that, we naturally deviate to do things that are more instantly gratifying. We check our phones, which is a quick dopamine hit. We distract ourselves from the discomfort and the overwhelm of that task we need to do by going and doing something else, maybe getting some food from the fridge or going and watching something. So here's the thing, procrastination is not a time management problem. It's actually more to do with our mindset. And one of the most powerful ways we can address it is to start becoming first of all aware of when we procrastinate, why we procrastinate, and how we do it. Because if we're aware of how we do it, we can reduce those temptations by, for example, leaving our phone in a different room. If we're aware of when we do it, we can make sure that in those moments, maybe we avoid studying altogether. Like say if we come straight back from school and we're tired, we don't try and study and exhaust ourselves more. Instead, we wait until the time when our energy is returned. Or alternately, we actually focus on aligning our learning and our exam success goals with our values. Instead of approaching this task with this negative mindset, we think about what it's giving us, how it's benefiting us. How, you know what, we may be afraid of not achieving our goal, but we really do want to give our all. Maybe we want to reconnect with our love for learning. Maybe studying will help us go to the university we want, to get the job that we'd like to have, so that we can provide security to our family, or to have the freedom to travel anywhere or do any job that we want, or to just feel proud of ourselves for giving our all. The key thing when we do this is that it's now creating a positive emotional association with the act of studying. And as we said, a positive emotion makes our brain want more of that action because it wants to feel good. Whereas if we're still associating it with negativity, unfortunately it's creating these negative habits that unfortunately means that we're going to be less motivated, less incentivized to do work, and we're more likely to succumb to instant gratification. So keep that in mind around procrastination. Create these habits around it that allow you to just sit down and do focused work for short bursts, to start building your focus and concentration muscle. Maybe like the Pomodoro technique, just 25 minutes of work, then 5 minutes of rest, and repeat that cycle a few times. And I'll be happy to put a link again to my program where I teach these different kinds of tools. Maybe creating an incentive system with yourself. So for example, saying, okay, 25 minutes of this work, then I'm going to get 5 minutes to perhaps listen to a song I like, or message a friend, or something along those lines. So we're now giving and taking, we're creating incentives for ourselves and benefits, and we're making this deal with ourselves. We're not doing so because we're feeling forced to by someone else. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind. Now, another thing that students struggle with is planning. And when it comes to planning, well, we've all again been in that situation. We've made that very ambitious and unrealistic plan. We've given our best, and we've just come nowhere near completing it. And then we look at our plan and we think, God, that was pointless. And we throw it aside because it just reflects back to us how we failed to keep to this plan that we created, right? It's so disheartening in that way. We made this plan and now we weren't able to keep to it. And it just reflects back in us our inability to follow through with our plans, which makes us feel bad about ourselves, which makes us have a negative association with planning, which means that we're less likely to plan again in the future. So let me tell you right now a few things you can do when it comes to planning that will help immediately. The first thing is stop looking at your plans as absolute things. When you're first starting out, look at your plans as experiments. They're just there to collect information. Try and make a plan for just your evening, and then see what happens when you try and do those tasks that you set. Maybe they took an hour longer. Maybe you finished them half an hour quicker. Either way, we then reflect on that information and we use that to inform the next plan that we create. And the idea here is we're trying to learn how to plan more realistically, right? As opposed to just making ambitious plans for a week, not being able to meet them on the first day and then throwing the whole plan out. So the idea here is we're really experimenting to learn how long things realistically take, what our energy can be like when we do these tasks, what's realistic for us to achieve in the evening. And that means that we're more likely to create better plans that we actually stick to. And the second thing we want to do, biggest mistake again that some students make, they plan in all their revision, they plan in all their studying, and you look at that plan and you think, oh God, just don't want to do this. What we want to do instead is plan the things that you want to do first, right? Not first in terms of your day, but first in terms of when you're making that plan. So I'll give you an example. When I was at school, I was playing tennis competitively, I was playing basketball competitively, I was playing badminton competitively as well. So there's a lot of sports. And I loved my sports. And so what I would do was when I made my plan, I knew what time I was doing that sport. So for example, from 5:30 till 7:30 that evening. So I put that in my plan first. So I always had something to look forward to. And I knew that if I wanted to go and do that activity guilt-free, if I wanted to do that activity while honouring my exam goals, well, then perhaps from 4:45 till 5:30, I want to really focus on my studies. And I know that when I come back at 7:30, I'm going to be a bit tired. So let me now relax a little bit, but then I'll resume work around 8 p.m., right? Or maybe at 9 p.m. after dinner. So the idea there was I had this idea of what was realistic for me to achieve, but I always saw something on that plan that I was going to look forward to, because that gives my brain a reward. It means I'm more incentivized to keep to that plan as opposed to just seeing a list of things that I don't necessarily want to be doing, right? So let's keep that in mind as well when it comes to our mind management and our time management when it comes to our planning. So I hope that's helped briefly. If you want any more advice on how to create study plans, I'm happy to put a link to my Exam Success Academy online resources, which will even give planning templates as well as about 45 minutes to an hour's worth of content on how to make study plans. So let's talk about some mind management problems and how students can deal with these. Biggest one we see, stress and anxiety, right? Stress and anxiety. And what I want to share with you today is this idea that stress and anxiety are not inherently bad things. They're not inherently bad things, right? But most of us have been taught to see them as the villain. We're taught to see them as the problem. And because of that, when they start to happen, we start to get anxious about the fact that we're getting stressed. And then it continues to perpetuate in this negative cycle. So what we want to do is we need to break that cycle. And to do so, we've got to realize that when it comes to positive psychology and what they teach, there's this idea of good stress and bad stress. So good stress is what psychologists term eustress, from like Greek terms like utopia, the ideal. And what good stress is basically it is stress that is challenging us, right? But in a way that we feel is within our ability to cope with it. On the other hand, distress is negative stress, distress. And when we feel distressed, it's because this thing is outside of our ability to cope. It feels overwhelming, it feels outside of that ability. So what we've got to start doing is start asking ourselves that question. Okay, this is a challenging piece of work, but is it within my ability to cope with this? You know what, I think it might be. And in itself, that reduces the impact of the stress that we feel. Because stress in itself is just a biologically optimized response to protect us from threats. The threat in this case being, I fail in my exams and my future falls apart and I disappoint my parents and all of these things. So naturally we feel anxious about that. But we realize that it's just there to protect us from this threat. And we realize, actually, maybe there's more of a constructive way towards this. Maybe if I just do my best for these next, half an hour that I'm doing this on, I don't need to feel as stressed about that end scenario. Because I know that the best way to take care of the future is to take care of the present moment. If I want my future to kind of work out, let me focus on my actions now. Let me take that mental energy that's going towards these anxious and negative thoughts and redirect it towards what I actually can control in the present moment. I can't control my end grade and what comes up in the paper and all of these things, but I can control my preparation. I can control doing the best I can. So let me redirect my energy towards actions in the present. Now, the problem with stress only occurs, as I said, when it exceeds our ability to cope or when we live in a state of constant low-level stress, right? Chronic stress. And this is what prevents us from fully resting, fully replenishing, and taking in our learning. For so many of us, if you've been in a situation as a student where you've been doing notes and it just doesn't feel like it's going in anymore, it's because of that low-level stress. It's because you're associating stress with this. As you're doing it, you're already thinking, oh wait, am I learning this? Is it not going in? I've got that test I've got to prepare for. Am I learning this? In itself, these thoughts are stopping you from being present with the actual content you've got to be learning. It's not helping you to excel. Instead, what you've got to do is before you even start, just go, okay, amazing. Got a bit of a challenge in front of me now, but for the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to be fully present with this, immerse in it as best I can, give my best to it. And that's it. No more secondary commentary around this about other things I want to be doing or whether it's going in or not. Just focus on that work for that 20-minute period. And then afterwards, if you want, allow yourself to test yourself, but only when you're writing things down. Because mental recall, going over it in our head, is something, first of all, that's not very efficient, but second of all, not something that is actually realistic. In the exam, you don't ever do things in your head. You're always writing them down on a scrap sheet of paper and you put them onto the actual piece of paper. So you don't need to mentally recall these facts. Instead, write them down. If you're trying to recall things, always do it with a pen and paper in hand. It'll prevent so much anxiety that may come if you can't immediately recall something in your head. So keep that in mind as well as a small tool to help you. So, we've discussed some things around that stress and anxiety side. I also want to give you guys another tool, right, around confidence. So when it comes to academic confidence, so many of us, we're so good at focusing on the one thing that we messed up instead of the 10 things that we did right. In fact, there's a famous kind of idea that was put forward around Albert Einstein teaching this class. And the first thing he did in the classroom was he started writing his 9 times tables. 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18, and he went on, 9 times 9 is 81, 9 times 10 is 91. Einstein wrote 9 times 10 is 91. And the class immediately noticed and started to laugh and point and be like, oh my God, Einstein's not that smart, all of these kind of things, right? And he just waited there patiently until the class quieted down. And then he said, you see, I solved those first 9 problems correctly, but you're only focused on the one that I got wrong. And that is what's happening in our own heads, always. We're focusing more on the things we've gotten wrong than the things that we're getting right. And the truth is it's a balance. We've got to acknowledge the things that we're doing right. Because if we are able to write down at the end of each day 3 things that we did towards our academic goals, it helps us to build momentum towards achieving them. And it feels good. It's that emotional reward, which means that our brain is more likely to want to keep doing actions that bring more of that reward in the future, which in this case is studying. But also, if we're writing down the things that didn't go so well, we have to do it with the mindset of, okay, but what am I learning from this? And what am I going to do differently next time? It's got to be done non-judgmentally, but as a tool for self-reflection and learning. So it's really important that if we are going to be criticizing something that we've done wrong, we're doing so without judgment, only with an attitude to learn. And when it comes to things we've done right, we don't invalidate them. We don't say, oh, I should have done that anyway in the first place. We don't just forget about it and move on. We actually take the time to acknowledge our improvement and our progress towards our goals. Even spending 5 minutes today doing some maths questions is better than spending 0 minutes. And to create that positive emotional association with studying, we've got to acknowledge those few minutes. So always do your best to acknowledge the things that you're doing in that positive way. And around confidence, something else that can really help is what I call creating process-based confidence as opposed to outcome-based confidence. For so many of us, our confidence is based on the outcomes. It's based on how likely we are to achieve that end goal. But when it comes to exams and interviews and things like that, you're not fully in control of that outcome. So it means that you're attaching your self-worth to an achievement that you may not even be able to control, which means you're going to feel stressed and demotivated if it goes wrong. You're afraid of what happens if you don't get that grade. So what we've got to do instead is create process-based confidence. Allow ourselves to build our confidence based around how hard we are trying and how much effort we're putting in, as opposed to whether or not we're going to get that outcome in the end. Use your confidence and base it around your process as opposed to just the outcome. It'll make such a difference. So, we've got some of these things that I wanted to share with you all today. The final thing I just want to share about is about learning. And again, you can learn more about this on my online resource around Exam Success Academy. I'll put a link in the comments. But the thing I want to tell you guys is there is no such thing as learning styles. You do not learn better visually, or learn better hearing, or learn better by kinesthetics, or learn better by notes. That is outdated science. In fact, it was science based on the wrong things. Some of us are better at thinking about things using our auditory sense, or our kinetic sense, or our visual sense. But we learn best when we're encoding knowledge in multiple sensory modes. And what I mean by this, if you want to apply it to your revision notes, for example, is yes, write them down. Because writing things down by hand brings in our kinesthetic sense, and it's a verbal way of learning or processing information. But then also draw that information in a visual way, represent it in a different visual way, so it works there. And then when you're reviewing that, speak it out loud. Speak it out loud because hearing your own voice saying it is now activating your auditory sense. And just in doing that, you're now building in 3 different modes of learning: your kinesthetic, your auditory, and your visual, right? You're bringing visual in 2 ways: the verbal written down things of the words themselves, but also the diagram or pictorial representation of it. Again, there's studies backing this up that this is the best way to learn. The most common one we see is what's called dual coding, which is basically when we're doing, as we said, like a double page spread of handwritten notes, so written out in words verbally, but also then on the side next to it representing it pictorially or in terms of a graphic. So now we're learning in our visual and verbal senses. So it's a really, really useful thing to think about. Cool. Guys, I hope that's been helpful. I hope that's been valuable for you. Please do let me know if it has been. This is the kind of content that schools invite me in to go and speak about, that I deliver hour-long workshops on each kind of topic on. I've just tried to give you a summary of what it's like, but I hope it's been valuable for you. So now what I wanted to just do is shift gears a little bit. Towards this idea of university. Right, university and the challenges that you might face before I move this over to a Q&A. So, in terms of university, right, that is, for most of us, our goal, right? If you're here watching this talk right now, your goal is probably go to university, and perhaps actually to go to Oxbridge. So what I'm going to do now is I want to share with you guys the 8 big pitfalls or traps that I saw students fall into when they actually either were applying to get to Oxbridge, or when they got there, or when they went to our top university, in hopes that it will help you guys to avoid these traps going forwards. So the first thing that I always say of these 8 is, and these are all framed by them in terms of be ready for this challenge. The first one is be ready for the bubble. And what I mean by the bubble is that's what we actually called Cambridge and Oxford, the Cambridge bubble. Because when you're in that intense environment, you forget about everything else going on outside of it. You really do. It is just this intense environment of learning, socializing, sports, and just trying to keep your head above water. And what that means is it's easy to lose perspective and get caught up in university problems and let it adversely affect your mental health. One of the best things you can do in those early years, as counterintuitive as it might feel, in this first year, first term of university, is actually go back to visit like your family or something for a weekend at some point. Just because it's going to take you out of that bubble a little bit and give yourself a little break to again reconnect with what actually is important. I saw so many students' mental health plummet because of that. So, what else is there? Be ready for what I call amplification. And what I mean by this is that university, when we go into that environment, it exaggerates our current perception of ourselves. It amplifies it. So if you're feeling really good about yourself, it will exaggerate and amplify that self-belief and competence. But if you're already struggling with low self-esteem and insecurities, it's going to really amplify those. And that's something that I saw firsthand at Cambridge. It's what happened to me, right? That environment really amplifies those. So, one of the things that I often say over here is that most of us, being honest with ourselves, are in that latter case. We're not quite sure there with our self-esteem and our confidence and our insecurities yet. So just be ready for that and be ready to put the work in to acknowledge those things and work on them. The truth is, guys, is that at least 30% of students that I know did not enjoy their Oxbridge experience. They didn't enjoy it, they wouldn't do it again. And the reason why was because they weren't able to acknowledge these things about themselves and do the work, right? Their insecurities got amplified, their mental health challenges were amplified. So do this work ideally before you get there, so that it gives you the best chance for it to help your potential to skyrocket, as opposed to be drawn in and suppressed. So the third challenge that you face is what I call high intensity intellect training. HIIT, right? So you've all heard of HIIT training for exercise, high intensity interval training. The same thing applies when you're in Oxford, high intensity intellect training. And what I mean by that is the pace and the density of what you're learning is unlike anything you've encountered. You know, it's why they have such long breaks outside of term to just recover from those kind of things. But here's the thing. As with all of these things when it comes to performance, the formula we're thinking of is that stress plus rest equals progress. So yes, you're going to be stressing your mind a bit challenging in this challenging environment to learn this content. But make sure you give yourself that time to rest, and it will just help you to grow stronger in that facility, in your mental facility. If you want to prepare for this, start now building your study ethic, your work ethic. Don't just study for A-levels, study in the way that you would want to study in a sustainable way when you reach a top university. And you can do this by training yourself gently, doing reps of Pomodoros, the 25 minutes, work 5-minute rest, doing 4 reps of that and seeing how you feel afterwards, and building up to a point where that becomes not effortless, but almost really possible. So definitely something that I hope can help is high intensity intellect training. So what else is there? Number 4, the challenge, is being ready for getting shot down. And what I mean by this is that there are going to be points in university where you'll inevitably feel stupid and embarrassed about how little you know. You know, in the supervision and tutorial experience at Oxbridge, in humanities, guys, you will write terrible essays. And in sciences, you will fail to initially understand many topics. You will. And you're going to go there feeling like an absolute idiot. But be comfortable with not knowing. Be comfortable with not knowing these things. Be comfortable with making these mistakes and become excited to learn. The students that excelled most in that environment were the ones who came into it with a growth mindset. They didn't see mistakes they were making as flaws in their character or proof they're not really good enough. They saw it as an opportunity to learn. They saw it as, yep, okay, I'm here now, but I know that I can get here if I keep putting that work in. So be ready for that kind of environment. Now, what's the 5th challenge? The 5th challenge is be ready for being a small fish in a big pond. Now, what I mean by this is that up until now, if you're hearing this talk, you've probably been 95% bigger than your lake of students around you. You've been performing at a higher level than most students. But in Oxbridge or a top university, statistically you're more likely to be mediocre. So here's the thing. If you've attached your sense of identity to your perceived intelligence or the results that you are getting, suddenly you're going to see that drop massively compared to what's around you. So do not attach your identity to your academic potential or your grades. Make sure that you attach it in some way to your ability to learn, to your openness to making mistakes and learning, that growth mindset I talked about. because it is so, so important to keep that in mind. It really, really makes such a difference to be able to incorporate that into what you're doing. So do not forget, you are not going to be in that top 5% anymore, probably, statistically speaking. So don't worry about that. That's not your goal. Your goal is to just be 5% better than you were each week compared to what you were before, by just continuing to honor your progress and growing in that way. The sixth challenge to be aware of is imposter syndrome, right? Feeling like you don't belong in that kind of environment. Imposter syndrome is all based around our comparison to others, seeing others and assuming they're better off than we are, or that they deserve it more than we do, and having fears and doubts about our own abilities. But again, the solution lies in that growth mindset. You are not a fixed entity. Even if your best was not good enough, in the same way that my best in my second year at Cambridge was not good enough to get a 2-1 grade, or my best at A-levels, my mocks initially was nowhere near enough to get me even a C grade, right? My best could still get better every single day if I just put in that consistent and continued effort. So focus on incremental progress, not end outcomes. And challenge number 7, be ready for self-doubt. Be ready for self-doubt. Your identity and behaviors are going to be challenged by what others around you are doing. And you've got to start getting to that stage where you can actually ask yourself, yes, everyone around me is studying for all this time in the library and they're stressing out, but do I really study best personally when I'm 12 hours in a day in the library? When it comes to internships and job applications, what do I really want? Do I really want consulting and banking like everyone else? Or stress? Am I just stressed because everyone else is stressing and I feel like I should also feel that way as well? Because if I'm not, I must be doing something wrong. I must not be working hard enough. Our beliefs will be challenged. We will doubt ourselves. And the most important thing we can do is just to become aware of that, to notice that it is going to happen, and try our utmost to reconnect with our values. To look at these things as experiments. 12 hours of studying in the library did not work for me. I had to experiment and be willing to fail with my experiments. In my third year, I worked less than I ever did. I worked maybe 6 to 8 hours a day when it came to those exams, and I got first class in my exams in my third year. Why? Because I worked efficiently. I worked intelligently. I wasn't burning myself out like many other students. There's a medicine student at Cambridge who was quite famous in our cohort because he'd be in the library from 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. with only breaks for eating. He got a 2-1, not even a first. Was it really worth it? Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. So be ready to challenge what you see around you. Don't let it feed your self-doubt. And the final challenge that I often say when it comes to university, be ready for feeling a bit alone. Guys, your first friendship group you make in university does not have to be your only group. The first set of people you meet in that first year, everyone's putting on a mask. Everyone is in a new environment trying to portray themselves the way they've always wished they were perceived, as opposed to the way that people at school saw them, right? So they're not even representing who they are in that way. I always say in your first year, it really is about experimenting and seeing what's around you. It's only in your second or third year that you start to kind of stabilize yourself and optimize for the things that you enjoy the most. Finding your tribe takes time, so be patient. And don't forget about the family and friends you have outside of uni when you're in that environment still. It's a really useful perspective check. And this is so vital to creating that support group that inspires, motivates, and uplifts you and helps you through those challenging times. So guys, that is what I wanted to share with you today. These 8 challenges around university and some really useful tools that I hope will help around these 8 principles. Now, it's a shame that I can't show this graphic, but I'll do my best to perhaps summarize these notes somewhere for you all as well. But now it is time for a Q&A. So please for the next, again, I'll be here at least for 5 minutes. If you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them. So please put down some questions you have in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them in whatever capacity I can, okay? So go for it with regards to your questions. Just running through some of these comments. Let's see what we've got comments-wise. Let's see. So sorry, my notifications are up as well. So, any questions? Any students over here with questions, perhaps? Himani, do you have any questions about your son? Kauser, if you're still here, do you have any questions around your subjects, perhaps? Any advice around those? Sadia, any questions at all? Yeah, these points you tend to forget and constant reminders are vital. Absolutely. The idea here is that these 8 principles should be fairly intuitive. It's just we don't always see them fully, holistically in that way. We get very, very caught up in other things, and as a result, we're not able to really have that perspective to be holistic about the way that we prepare for our exams in that way. So, any questions for me? I'll definitely be here for another few minutes. If anyone has any questions. I'm just going to put a link in the bio for anyone who wants to learn a bit more about the content I put up. Perfect. So Farheen asks, Kazia, any tips on how to prepare for tests like MAT and STEP? Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to MAT and STEP, so these are the admissions tests for maths, if you want to study maths right at Oxford or Cambridge. The best advice I can give you, very honestly, is, and again, this is going to be a bit counterintuitive, but it's not me promoting myself anyway because I don't prepare students for that. It's around tutoring if you can, because the truth is most schools do not support students at all when it comes to MAT and STEP. I would say that it's really important when it comes to content you don't understand. I highly recommend if you can, if you're already quite strong mathematically, give those papers a go yourself. And the key thing is as you do it, if you can look at mark schemes that may exist for some of these things as well, to figure out, can you learn some of these concepts yourself, or are there ones which are really, really outside of your understanding? And then write those lists of things down and go through them with perhaps a tutor. So it's very, very much using that, like to the best of your abilities, like using the time that you're paying for with the absolute best way. But I definitely say, when it comes to MAT and STEP, the biggest challenge is the time side of things, right? It's a very intense thing from a time management perspective. Like you're trying to basically do a whole new subject in a way on top of the ones that you're already doing because the demands are so high. I would say that because of that, your time management is so crucial, right? The thing with MAT and STEP is that they're really looking at how you solve problems. So in other words, doing things by memorization, as we could have maybe got away with in A levels, does not work anymore. So it's really helpful to go deeper in terms of an understanding sense. And say, for example, as you're doing each question in the math question, doing like an arrow next to it, pointing to it and going, why am I doing this step? So write down, I'm doing this step because I need to get to this thing, which will help me then get to this thing. And then next step saying, I'm going to differentiate this because it's going to help me to give this rate, which I then need to use to help me figure this thing out. And the idea here is when we're writing these things in words, it helps us to understand the why behind the tools that we're using, which means that if they ask questions outside of the context that we already know them, right, we're more able to adapt to them. It's one of the things I see students a lot fall into traps with because they prepare for MAT and STEP in the same way that they would for A levels. And the truth is you can get away with A levels with somewhat memorizing patterns, but with maths at a high level, you really want to be focusing on your understanding. And I found that tool about annotating each step you're doing, it helped me to expedite my learning so much when I was doing maths courses at Cambridge as part of engineering, because I was really having to engage with why I'm doing each step, like what's it getting me, as opposed to just follow that process blindly but not know how to apply it in different contexts. So I hope that helps. And again, there are some really good tutors for those kind of resources that will help you specifically with them. I may know a few, so let me know if you have any, if you want me to put you in touch with those. But I'm sure that will help as well. Sadia, amazing. Yep, enjoyed it. I'm so grateful that you were here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to put this link in, any more about the 8 principles. Cool. All right. Any other questions? Perfect. I hope it was helpful. I said MAT and STEP are not my specialist areas, but the main thing is the skills around them which you need to develop. I think they're actually really good papers, to be honest. And I would definitely say if you're not sure yet about Cambridge or Oxford with regards to applying for maths, STEP puts off a lot of students. right? So I really recommend even starting to look at it now, like as early as possible, just to see, is it in your grasp? Because Oxford gets so competitive for maths because almost all good maths students who don't want to do STEP will apply there. So definitely maths at Cambridge is really challenging, but you can get ahead of it by like getting your STEP prep really going quite early on. Cool. Any other questions around any other tools that we can share today? If not, I think in 2 minutes time or so I'll end the video. I'm so sorry, by the way, that I couldn't share my screen. Apparently, you got to set that screen sharing up from the start, and then I wouldn't be on screen, which kind of, I think, for me, it takes away from like the actual emotion of what I'm delivering. So hopefully it's been valuable having it there. And in the future, I think what I might do is I might organize it more as a Zoom call instead to sign up on, as opposed to a Facebook Live, because that way I can share that screen and everyone will be engaged with it in that platform. Cool. Any other questions? Perfect. Final few minutes if anyone's got questions. Perfect. So they will be in touch for more info once time comes. Yep, please do get in touch. Be happy to help in any way that I can. Cool. If there's no other questions in the next minute or so, then I will end this call and we can adjourn for the day. Oh, Farine asked, any tips to make your personal statement stand out? That's a very, very good question. Okay, here's a few more. Recommend for yes 7 students how they form the foundation. For sure. So let's address these ones in order first. So making your personal statement stand out. Do you have any, so which subject would that be for? Would that be for maths? Just to clarify. Is that personal statement for maths? I'll answer that in a second. Diraj asks, any recommendations for year 7 students? How should they form the foundation as they're too young to comprehend? So I would actually say, Diraj, that when it comes to early level, like students who are in year 7 still, it's actually a really, really useful thing to do to think about that at that stage, they are just about to reach a stage where they start looking to their peers for more guidance than their parents. But you still have at that stage the ability to help them to direct their thinking in a certain way. So actually what I often mention is that when it comes to yes, and students, I actually recommend their parents, so quite a few parents get Exam Success Academy because the activities that are there are basically coaching style questions, which you can ask as a parent to your child to help them to just think about some of these things and to start having conversations with them, right? It's a really, really useful thing to do, to have these kind of questions in mind that you can use to direct them towards their thinking, to help build those foundations. The best thing any parent can do, studies have shown this, is modeling the behavior that you want your child to inhabit. So if you want to teach your kids emotional regulation, do it so yourself, right? Do it yourself. If you want to get them planning and timetables, make your own plans and stick them on a wall somewhere where they can see. Show them the satisfaction you get from ticking things off each time on the list, right? For year 7 students, I would say that at that stage they are still impressionable by parents, depending on the environment they're in. So if they're at a top grammar school, for example, they'll definitely still be quite impressionable in that way. So a resource like this can be very, very helpful. I would say that they're not necessarily too young to comprehend. A lot of that depends on their maturity that they're at or the stage that they're at. But definitely as a parent, I'd say the best support you can be is to model that behavior, to be as supportive as you can and praise them for the process, not the outcome, and make them aware that you're praising them because they've done their best, not because they did well. And if they don't do well, teaching them to praise them the process. I think helping them to do their wins. So for example, each day at dinner or something afterwards going, hey, what did you do really well today? And getting their feedback on that. Cool, what didn't go so well do you think today? What do you think we can learn from that together? So helping to build these foundations in terms of the way that they think through you and them having an actual dialogue, an actual connection. So that's a really, really good thing to do. Amazing. So I hope that's answered that briefly. If you have more questions about that, I'm happy to have a longer discussion with you about that personally, because it really does depend on your child's nature, right? For Year 7 students, it really does depend on where they are at their development, because some are more emotionally developed than others at that stage. So, and the question about personal statements, we got one answer: make a list of all the things your child's done during their life, achievements, competitions, essays, everything. It's the first step. I would say for maths and computer science, I would say a really, really helpful thing to do with maths and computer science. Let's see. It's about it's about narrative, I would say. Like, what is the story that you're trying to tell, essentially, right? Because once you've done that first step, which Saba so rightly put down, what achievements, competitions, and essays have you done? The key thing is, how do you link it together in a coherent narrative? Like, how do you actually put them together in a way that flows in that way? So what I would say, if you're applying for maths and computer science, think of two parts of maths and computer science that you absolutely are passionate and interested about, right? What two parts are you really interested about? So it might be, for example, cybersecurity algorithms. It might be about algorithmic trading, so on a financial front, which links together, say, maths and computer science principles. And then what you want to do is you want to be able to talk a little bit about that, or like what you did, say, for a competition you did on that. Say you did something to code or program, something like that. And then you want to be able to talk about maybe a book that you read around that as well. So the idea here is that you are taking one or two really areas of interest you have, and then doing courses or projects or reading around those, so your personal statement flows in a narrative around those things, right? So I hope that that would really, really help with regards to the personal statement for maths and computer science, around just kind of getting an understanding of what you want to be thinking about when you structure it. Because going via the path of like, what have I done achievements wise and stuff, the risk is it doesn't flow. But if you start with areas of interest in those subjects, you can now start doing your reading and stuff in advance to prepare for when it's time to write that personal statement. Sometimes if you're interested in cybersecurity, for example, you can now start doing courses and maybe doing a project online and maybe reading a book around it, and that will then form the basis of your personal statement, right? And of course, with maths, I'd say any subject that's maths in, you want to be showing your achievements with it in terms of Olympiads, in terms of steps, in terms of other mathematical qualifications and competitions that you've done, because I do want to see that you have strong mathematical skills. There's no substitute for that. There are also some cool maths competitions and things that you can do as well. So I hope that those things can help with that. For the computer science side of things, it's definitely about like, what projects have you done? What have you created? What have you built? You know, if you've done a cool project building, say, I don't know, a program of some kind that has a certain function. What got you interested in writing that? Where did you learn about it? What languages did you use to create it? What was the end outcome of that? These are all things to think about with regards to the personal statement. Any other questions? Again, I'll be here for 1 minute before we do that. Any other questions? Let's just go through some of these comments. Dear Rajesh, you're absolutely welcome. Please do get in touch. Very, Kaza, amazing. I'm glad it was helpful. Perfect. Prachi, oh, you're very, very welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Sadia as well, thank you so much for coming as well. Really hope it was helpful. Claire, I hope you enjoyed it too. Hope you found it useful as well. And Harry as well, if he was attending. Amazing. Cool, just 1 more minute then, unless anyone has any further questions for me. You still have 15 minutes of my time if you wish to use it, so I'm happy to help in any way I can. In fact, one thing I will do is I'll share a free video with you guys, which is actually about productivity, if any of you are interested, just so you can see the kind of like content, I guess, that I can perhaps help with. It's just a free video on YouTube if you want. Annabelle, amazing, very useful. You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you found it useful. I'm just sharing this free link with you. It's a YouTube video. You can watch it in your own time. It's just about, I think, 8-9 minutes. It's a video that I made about productivity, and there's 4 different stages of flow of productivity. It's from my Exam Success Academy course. If you like it, you might find the course itself quite useful. But I do hope that it helps. and that it gives you guys, again, just an insight around how to be more productive, which is, of course, one of the time management skills that we want to learn about. Yep, amazing. Annabelle, Sadia, Kauzam, Farheen, Diraj, Prachi, thank you so much for coming. Sadia, Saba, of course, for organising this entire group. Thank you all so much for coming. And V2, thank you all so much for attending this. Cool. Just one more minute or so, if there's any other questions. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions that you don't want to put over here, Claire, thanks, you're so welcome. Hope you found it useful. And Neelam, thank you so much for coming. If there are any questions that you have for me that you don't want to put in a public forum, just message me as well. You can add me on Facebook. Yep, just add me there, and you can always email me. I'll put my email over here as well, which I'm happy to do. If you'd like to get in touch with me via email, it's just contact@camtaj, my name, camtaj.com. So if you'd like to email me there. So at the end of this, I'll put again in the comments just Exam Success Academy link, free video, and so on. Himani, thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. Hope you found it helpful. Amazing. If any of you, by the way, have kids at QE Boys or Henrietta Barnett School, I'll be visiting them both next week to give talks there. So maybe be seeing them there if any of you have kids who are at those schools. Cool. Just one more minute and I'll end the video. Perfect. I don't think that there seem to be any more questions. So I hope you had a good time. Again, apologies we couldn't do the screen sharing. This would have been a lot better with the visual aid, but perhaps next time we'll jump on Zoom or something similar instead. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Thank you for spending your Sunday evening with me. And I look forward to hearing from many of you guys soon. And good luck. Good luck to all of you students as well who are here. Good luck with your offers that maybe some of you are getting. Good luck with your exams that you have, teacher assessed grades, NEAs, whatever it is that you guys have. Good luck with them. And then good luck for the GCSEs and A-levels. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Take care, have a lovely evening, and goodbye.